So another week comes to an end, and we find ourselves sharing a bit of tipple and some goodness knows what, and trying to fix the world's problems. Once again, I must tell you, if you think we know what we're talking about, you should probably have some of these wise waters yourself, and you'll soon realize that we're no experts. Gents, what are we drinking today?
Thank you, George.
Are you wearing red socks?
Yes, I am. Are you wearing a hat?
Yes, I am.
Why? We're indoors.
Well, I didn't get a haircut.
Okay.
Anyway, yes.
So you're not trying to make a fashion statement?
Well, maybe I've learned a thing or two from this gentleman here. No, I haven't. Very pragmatic reasons. I need to get a haircut.
Well, it's fashionable enough.
Oh, thank you.
That's good.
I don't know how to take that coming from you, but anyway.
Yeah, we're back in East Africa, and it's
You like
Did
that
we
part
ever
of the
leave?
world? Yeah.
yeah, we did. We came back
yes.
to Zim
Last week.
and I decided that we should just go back. And in Kenya, it's another coffee society blend. So it's a blend of numerous coffees, dark coffees. It's good. The aroma is perfect, and I need it.
I guess you'll tell us a bit more about why later. Shumba, what are we having?
We're having another Highland single malt, this time from the House of Dalmo. And it's particularly delightful as well because it's a gift from our friends at Access Finance, Raymond and Sikosana. They are quite big in the bureau de change space and remittances. And they felt that, as fans of the show, they would give us some tipple for a mention. So cheers, Raymond and Sikosana.
Cheers, gents.
I think we actually had some recently. What are your thoughts?
No, I didn't participate that evening. I was very wise and I stuck to beer.
Yeah, today I'm choosing to. This is one of the few single malts that I prefer to drink neat, and I prefer to drink spirits neat out of a cognac glass because it allows the spirit to express itself.
Cheers. Ray, Sikos? I like. Yeah, I like. Quite a lot has happened this week. A lot of very, very meaty issues have been in the press. At the end of last week, Mtuli gave his midterm fiscal review, and it's been all over the news since then. I think we should perhaps spend a few minutes talking about some of the key issues there, perhaps delving into some of the less talked about aspects of the statement. One of the interesting things that came out, and I know this is a pet subject of yours, Tinashe, was
He's got lots of pit subjects.
Lots of pets.
the contribution of various key sectors to the GDP. Would you like to unpack a couple of them that you think perhaps ought to be discussed?
Well, I think one is agriculture, primarily because we had a very good agriculture season. And, the Ministry of Finance has assumed that the sector will grow by 34%. So that's the highest increase in GDP sectors. Then everything else, I think, is circling around 1 to 5%. But I think agriculture will outperform and we'll see an increase of 34%. But unfortunately, agriculture contributes less than 10% of our economy. Another one is
So why do we, before we go on to mining, why do we make such a big deal of agriculture if it contributes only 10% to our GDP?
Well, I think...
Or maybe 10% is the biggest. Is it the biggest?
No, it's not. So when you look at our GDP contributions, service sectors contribute about 63%. And the highest contributor...
So 2/3 of our economy is service.
It's services. And
presumably that's really IT.
ICT contributes about 7%, but wholesale and distribution contributes about 18-19%. That's the highest.
So we're a nation of traders.
So why all the
Yes.
fuss about farming?
Well, there are many reasons why people are interested in agriculture. And I think part of it is that's where a lot more people are employed. But I also think that the people that sit in cabinet and that sit in government are farmers. So there is a natural bias.
But aren't we all
towards
farmers?
farming.
Yeah, he's a farmer.
Yeah, I'm not a farmer. Are you a farmer?
No. I don't have the temperament for it, I'm afraid.
Can you even boil an egg?
But I think that's besides the point. I know some really good farmers that are out there, and I know some people that could benefit from their expertise, and they would do well were it not for the loop-sided government policies towards agriculture. I think we overspend on agriculture. The World Bank has highlighted this. A lot of our resources, remember Command Agriculture.
Well, anyway, so I'm going to come in. So 10% is agriculture.
Yeah, less than 10%.
Less than 10% is
9.3,
agriculture.
But this year it will probably, because the GDP is, it will probably be around 10%.
Around 10% on agriculture.
Yeah.
Rufaro says, well, why is agriculture such a big deal if it's such a small contributor? You say, well, it's because a lot of people work there, and because policymakers have invested in this sector. What other sectors need highlighting?
Okay, in terms of growth, well, maybe
Or contribution.
Contribution.
Yeah, you were about to touch on mining.
Mining is 6%.
So why
And
all the fuss?
growth, and these are Ministry of Finance, it's about 2% or so. Well, I think you must realize that the sort of society we live in is, sorry to say this, but it's very socialist communist. And socialist communist states naturally, even the society themselves, do not see intangibles as value creation. So if you start talking about branding, they do not see that because they cannot touch it. They don't see that as value creation. So what they like to see is tangibles. They like to see the minerals, the produce. Then they feel like they've actually.
But our role model on the international stage, China, is run by the Communist Party of China, and they seem to get this. What are we missing?
I think that the Chinese have shown us that they're extremely pragmatic. So it's not that the Chinese didn't understand agriculture. They did. If you remember Mao, when he came in, he had the whole cultural and agricultural revolution.
Well, that was a bit of a
disaster. It didn't work.
It was a bit of a disaster.
It was a precisely.
It led to famine and the death of 30 to 40 million Chinese people.
Likewise in India, when they tried the same thing.
But they're very pragmatic, so it didn't work. I think we're still in our process where eventually we're going to know that it doesn't work. But
So
we're
what
still in
works?
that process. Well, what works is any product where you are not a price taker. So the big problem with agriculture is we're a price taker. So what we mean by price taker in the global scenario, even mining, why you find that you have these big, huge mining companies, but their turnovers or their market cap are maybe 100th of what Apple is. It's because commodity-driven sectors, you're a price taker. And if you look at commodities, what has happened in real terms since 1970, the price has not been fantastic, except if you're perhaps in oil. But even in oil, if you look at what has happened in oil in the last 20 years, it hasn't been a huge increase. But look at our iPhone, right? An iPhone was introduced when? 2007, right? Mm-hmm. How much was it?
About $700-800 then.
How much is a typical iPhone now? You're paying about $1,000 or more, and some up to $2,000, right? So the price in a decade, the price has actually increased, right? And the production cost of an iPhone has substantially reduced. That is what we mean by value creation. But unfortunately, you can never have that kind of value creation in agriculture or in minerals. This is not to say that those
so where
sectors are
can
not
we have
important.
it? So where can we have it? Can we have it in distribution and wholesale?
Not entirely, because distribution and wholesale, you don't have control over the activity. So it's purely determined by the level of trade in an economy. And unfortunately, in Zimbabwe right now, we're like Tanzania. where there's a lot of trading that's happening, but you don't have that much control.
So where can we create this value?
Well, I think that if you look at the numbers, it's clear that we export people, so education. And I would say that education and health, so we are very good. It turns out that Zimbabweans are very good when we leave the country. Perhaps not as good when they're in the country, but
or could it be that all the good ones left and we are all we're the bottom of the barrel?
We're the unpleasant residue.
It could be, but if you look at return on investment, I think we've done phenomenally well when you look at our diasporan populations, when you look at what we've done in South Africa, in Botswana. So I would say that something that we actually have control over is education, and I would say that we're better served spending as much as we can in education and producing these graduates. So part of the argument that government...
But some of them are vendors. We've produced quite a few graduates.
As long as they're not here in Zimbabwe and they're vending in South Africa or in Botswana, to me, it's perfectly fine.
But isn't it perhaps about the kind of education that we give them?
We need to upskill.
Before the show, we're talking about us being one of the most educated countries in Africa.
Literate.
Well, this is the conclusion we came back to, right? That they measure literacy. How many of us can read and write? It's very high. But how many of us are skilled? So, how many of us know how to make an iPhone? And is our educational system geared for that?
No, it's not. We tend to favor these humanities. And I have no problems with humanities.
You did humanities.
Yeah.
I have a problem with us focusing on humanities and getting a lot more humanities graduates out of our universities. We have probably about 30,000 graduates each year that we produce. And those that went into the polytechnic and are involved in somewhat technical subjects, we produce less than 2,000 of those a year. And a lot of those find themselves in South Africa, in Australia, and abroad. So clearly it's loop-sided again, where we're focusing on the wrong kind of graduate. And this is the problem with agriculture. The problem with agriculture, why it's employing so many people, is because a lot more kids are out of school. And the only means of economic activity that is available to them is agriculture. So it's not because they want to be in agriculture. And what we need to be doing...
But isn't something else also broken in agriculture? Because if you look at the developed world, for example, if you look at the US, right? In 1800, 98% of the population worked in farming. 100 years later, in 1900, this number had come off and it was less than 50% of the population that is employed in farming. Today, only 2% of the population is employed in farming. And yet they have amazing yields and they are net exporters in agriculture. So how is it possible that agriculture not only is just 10% of our economy, it employs all these people?
Because they're not productive, Rufaro.
They're not productive.
It employs these people doing what machines can do, or what chemicals can do, or what better seed can do. And it comes back to, are our graduates skilled?
Yeah.
Do they know how to be productive?
I don't think you understand the gravity of your interjection there, George. That was brilliant. If I should say so myself.
From Tinashe. I should wear a hat more often.
But it's critical, because what tends to happen is the better you are at agriculture, the less labor you need, the more capital you need. So it's sort of, if we focus on agriculture, the better we become actually at agriculture, the more and more you will have unskilled and redundant labor. Because what you will do is you'll introduce a lot of capital. And that's why in America, or even in South Africa, agriculture only contributes about 1.7%.
Okay, you brilliant. But I think...
Oh no, you guys are trading companies now?
Thank you, George.
A slight tweak to that. I don't think you necessarily...
Did you spike his drink?
I don't think you necessarily lose jobs, but I think people can go on to do other things. So I mean, my little farm, we've put in a bit of capital, we've improved the technology by which we produce, we've actually created more jobs, and our revenue's gone up. because we're not bogged down doing mundane tasks. But I see the producer signaling that we need to go for a drinks break. So we'll pause here and we will be back in a couple of minutes and we'll take it from there. Welcome back. Just before we went to our break, we were touching on the fact that perhaps agriculture and mining are given too much prominence in this country relative to their GDP contribution. And perhaps we are underinvesting in our people because it looks like we actually get a significant return from exporting people. And perhaps even sectors like agriculture and mining would benefit from a more skilled labor force. What did we learn from Thuli's speech about how much we are investing in our people?
Well, it turns out it's more to do with the Western aid who are actually investing in our people. For example, in the health sector, where when you look at the budget numbers, we've only spent, the utilization has been in health sector was in the Ministry of Health was 17%.
But this is good.
That's
We've got
one
savings.
of the lowest. Well, it turns out
We spent less money than we budgeted.
Yeah,
So-
it's like you running your household without meat. You make
No, the
you make a
neighbors
saving. You make a saving.
The
You make a
neighbors
saving,
the neighbors giving my kids meat.
and you.
Well, that's fine. My kids are eating meat. They're healthy. Where's the problem?
You would expect that dollar saving would be somewhere, but we're not. So the saving is at the bottom, but at the top, when we look at the top numbers, that saving is gone. So we're utilizing that money elsewhere. So I don't think that, and when you look at the state of our health,
Wait, say that again. So we spent 17% of the health budget.
yeah, we should be, the run rate is on average 50%. So media, we should have spent about 50%.
We spent 17.
But we only
So
spent
there's 33%
Yes.
of the health budget that has not been spent.
Yes.
But the overall government budget is about on
50%.
track.
It's about on track.
So what did we do with the money that we saved on health?
And I think that's where
And how are we saving money in healthcare given the state of our infrastructure in that
No,
sector?
the Americans are paying.
No, but still.
How much did the Americans give us for health? Or the donor community?
297 million. And they
So,
expect
so
it to
do you
spread
think
out to
we've got
500.
world-class healthcare infrastructure?
Well, I don't know. I don't get sick very often. And when
No,
I
we
do,
don't. We
I
don't.
go to private.
Well, I can tell you for a fact that we have appalling healthcare infrastructure, and there's a lot of scope for us to spend significantly more than we do.
Okay. So we saved a whole bunch of money. Where did it go?
Well, that's what we expected the minister to tell us.
So we
but
overspent in other
unfortunately,
areas.
We overspent.
Which
in
are some
other
of the key areas we overspent in?
Well, it depends with the run rate, right? So
Where the run rate is above 50.
Where the run rate is somewhere around 50% is Ministry of Defense, the President's Office. Yeah, that's where we've spent.
But that's
more
not
or
that's
less.
not overspending. If you've got a budget and
No,
you're
no, they're
halfway
not.
through the year and you've spent 50% of your budget, that's in line with budget.
Yes.
So are
It's
there departments where we've spent more? Because what you've articulated is that in healthcare we've spent significantly less than we allocated, right? So are there other departments or ministries where our run rate is more than 50%?
we've acquired other activities that were not necessarily in the budget, but there's certain things that we're spending on that were not in.
Such as?
Well, I think the vaccines, they would have spent.
But that's
a bit
health?
more. Yeah, it is, but it sits outside. So, for example,
Oh.
there's this
Why are
100
they not
million.
part-
There's this 100 million US
Yeah.
dollars that's been spent on vaccines. It's not very clear whether that is all entirely from Zimbabwean resources or it's also foreign aid funded.
But it's certainly not reflected.
It's not reflected
in the health
in
budget.
the
So
health
how is a vaccine not in the health budget?
Well, like
What
I
kind
said,
of accounting is that?
that's what we needed, and I'm hoping that Parliament will spend a bit more time really, getting down into the details, where the minister must provide us with the answers to a lot of these questions.
Okay.
So I do not like to speculate, because if we start speculating, then people will say all sorts of things. But I think that it's important that the minister, what we'd have expected him to say is, if you look at the line item Ministry of Health and Child Welfare, we've spent only 17%. We did this because the difference is XYZ and it's over there. We didn't get that clarification. And I think that the people of Zimbabwe deserve to actually understand, and also to know.
It's quite, you know what many people might not know about this guy. He was one of Mtuli's students, and it's quite interesting to hear the student
criticize the
master like this.
No, I actually don't criticize the master. Mtuli,
you accept that he was your master?
Oh yes, I think
Okay.
Mtuli is one of the best minds that I've ever come across. So he's also a free marketeer like us. Well, I hope he still is. But he's a brilliant chap in every regard. And I think what Zimbabweans don't understand is that he actually appreciates a lot of us.
Okay, you're starting to become an apologist.
Well, I'm not an apologist, but I think he does.
This is a rabbit hole.
Thank you.
Well, I think before we go on, so that
You insist that we go down this rabbit hole.
Well, yes, I do insist. I think it's very important that people realize that criticizing the government is actually good for the government itself, because there are a lot of blind spots. When you're in government, you're like an ostrich and your head is very...
Okay, now you're on a soapbox, and we are pulling you down
Oh my gosh.
off that soapbox.
Yeah.
Okay, but a couple of other things have happened during the week that, in a way, circle back to the speech. The government then goes on to ban chrome ore exports. And I think we're in agreement that mining is underperforming its
Potential?
yeah, or at least the attention that it's given by the country,
Yeah.
government, and everybody else. Everybody talks about mining. What do you make of us then saying no? You can't export raw chrome, and in a year's time you can't even export concentrates.
Yeah, I think it's arbitrary, and I think that it's exactly the wrong signal to investors and operators in the mining space, because what you're telling them is you're changing the rules in the middle of the game. So there are investors, entrepreneurs, mining houses who got into that space on the basis and understanding that they could export or they could export concentrate, right? So without warning, without giving them some runway to sort themselves out.
It was immediate. It was with immediate effect.
They wake up one day and they have to revisit their business model and their investment model, and maybe it doesn't make sense. So why would they then, in such an environment, invest more to beneficiate, right? Because we are constantly chopping and changing. So I think so. So I think my first problem with
it. So you're saying this could actually have the opposite effect of what the government wants.
Absolutely. It basically, what it means is that everybody's on notice that the rules of the game can change arbitrarily without notice, and so plan accordingly, right? And if you get notice like that, how would you behave? Would you invest more or less going forward?
No, I'll tell you how I'd behave. You and I might remember in our days as student accountants, we used to go to these events where they'd say it was an open bar. But at some arbitrary point in the night, they'll tell you that the bar's closed.
Yep.
And so how did you behave when you got there?
You ordered a bunch of it.
You camped at the bar and made sure you got more than your fair share before that arbitrary moment.
So yeah, I think it's self. We're shooting ourselves in the foot. Just even if it makes a lot of sense for us to move in that policy direction, I think the way you make these announcements and changes, you've got to engage and get them on board. So if chances are they can see what your vision is, you want beneficiation to happen, right? And they would come on board if you said, okay, fine, this is the path to get us there, right? What do you guys need as investors, as businesses who hadn't prepared for that to get us there? And you work with them, you know. So I think it's going to be a problem for our mining sector.
Okay. Now, still on the mining sector. Now, this is one for you avowed free marketeers. I want to hear you.
Are you not an avowed free marketeer?
You've labeled me a communist.
Well, you're not really a communist. You sometimes pretend to be.
Oh, right. I'm redeeming
Our
myself.
producer is a communist.
And he behaves accordingly. In fact, I call him a Marxist. So we then get told Fidelity is getting privatized. 10 new investors that will take over the majority in Fidelity. Your take on it?
I think it's fantastic. Why does government own Fidelity printers in the first instance? Why is it not in the private sector? Why are they still holding on to some of it? Why aren't they offloading all of it? This is a positive step.
Do you think that it's disingenuous when you keep the regulation but you privatize the company?
Look, I'm not for regulation.
How's this different from Econet?
I'm not for regulation, by the way.
No, how's it different from cell phone companies?
What we actually
It's private. It's private, but
yeah, but we actually have three.
Maybe they're going to.
But they're regulated by Portas.
No, yes, but it was deregulated. What I mean by that is you do not have a monopoly. We used to have PTC as just one monopoly, right? But they allowed Net1 and they allowed Telecel. And
so maybe there's a roadmap. But what I'm saying is, is it better?
There is no roadmap because they would have made it very clear.
No. What I'm saying is, in principle, all things being equal, right? Is a business like Fidelity Printers better off being run by the state or by private actors?
Things are not all equal. That's what we're trying to say. They're not equal, right? Because just because let's be very clear. Cronyism is just as bad as communism.
No, but we're not speaking to.
Do you accept that cronyism?
Of course, cronyism is
as bad as communism.
No. Well, I think crony capitalism.
Okay.
I think communism.
I'm letting this rabbit hole go on just for another 30 seconds.
Right. I think communism is much more evil than crony capitalism. But we're not speaking to the identity of these 10 mining houses and how they. Do we know who
they are?
All I'm saying is, if you zoom out, right, this thing was 100% owned by government. Now, a significant part of it is not. That is, to me, is positive.
And it's not positive.
No, but Tinashe,
I want to make it very clear. I want to make it very clear.
Well, let me speak.
It's important we make it very clear. Cronyism is bad.
No, but
cronyism and
you're setting cronyism. I'm just speaking to the principle.
Bad.
I'm just speaking to the principle that it's no longer 100% government owned. Is that not a good thing?
Is cronyism not a principle?
No, but Tinashe,
are you against cronyism?
No, but Tinashe, you've got to be.
Let him answer.
No, you've got to.
Why?
Because you're not letting anybody else talk. Because you're monopolizing the discussion. You've got to be consistent, Tinashe. You consistently tell us that the worst thing is for government to own businesses.
Yes.
And here the government has sold the business.
So, and I'm very clear, right? That what they have sold are their rights, but they have kept the regulation, and that is still problematic.
But it's a step forward, right? So it's a step forward. Like, are we better off from where we were?
It's not a step forward. It's not a step forward, and that's why I have to be very clear about what we mean by free market, and people need to be very clear.
Next week you're not coming on the show.
We need to be very clear about what free market is or what a market is. So
we're not going down that rabbit hole again.
But just because I choose and pick a particular person to do what I want, because remember, the guardrail is the regulation.
But
right?
But there are degrees of bad, isn't it? There's bad, worst, and surely we've moved from worst.
All right. So maybe Rufaro can appreciate this and understand this. Is there anything good? Or who would you prefer, Stalin or Mao?
No, we're going down a rabbit hole.
That's what you're saying to me.
I think we should
That's
have.
exactly
I think
what you're saying to me.
I think
you're
we
saying
should have.
I must differentiate.
I think we should go for. We should go for a break
Russian
now.
communism and Chinese communism.
We're going for a break
It's all
now, and maybe
communism.
when we come back, your mood would have improved. And I'm sorry I said you should wear ice cream colored pants again. Maybe you should go back to normal pants. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. Welcome back. And just before we went away, we got into a bit of a heated argument about whether privatizing Fidelity without changing the regulations is a good or a bad thing. And Tinashe is very, very excited about this. But unfortunately, we don't have enough time to explore this. So Tinashe, we will allow you a bonus segment. After we finish recording this show, we'll give you 15 minutes to rant and rave to your heart's content about crony capitalism and deregulation and monopolies and whatever other neoliberal...
It's not neoliberal, by the way.
Oh, okay. That too. Whatever other vocab you can spit out there. But just before we went away, or before we went down that rabbit hole, Rufaro had spoken about how the manner in which the chrome export rules had been changed was a bit arbitrary and signaled policy inconsistency and is likely to be a deterrent to investment. We also saw a couple of other signals in the news over the past few days that carried the same tone. TIMB is reported to be pushing for basically re-establishment of the tobacco auction system because it's all but extinct now, while the boss of the Zimbabwe Development Agency was reported as having said that the government is failing to protect investors, despite him being supposed to be the government's #1 investment salesperson. Is this more of the kind of thing that you're talking about?
Absolutely. I think that, so I don't know whether you've been paying attention, but over the last week and a half, China made a hard left turn and basically changed a whole bunch of policies regarding their extremely successful tech entrepreneurs and tech companies that wiped off about $1 trillion of market valuation.
How many zeros is that?
That's it's a lot of
zeros, eh?
Yeah.
I don't think we even have that many Zim dollars.
And it's quite dramatic, and it has a lot of investors on the global stage rethinking their views about investing in China, doing business in that part of the world. And what you just alluded to vis-a-vis TIMB and ZDAT, it speaks to that, because when you make significant changes overnight, it shakes investors' confidence. And investors need confidence to take long-term views. They need to believe that the rules of the game are sustainable and will be changed in a way that's predictable. So I think, and from a Zimbabwean perspective, it looks like these developments in China have nothing to do with us. But China is considered in this part of the world as our bellwether friend, and we do get a lot of policy inspiration from them. And if you have the world's second largest economy making such dramatic changes, then we might actually see more of that sort of policy inconsistency in this part of the world, because they look at China and are inspired by what's happening there. So to me, it's very disturbing.
But so, if you're a policymaker, what do you do when you see something not working and it needs to be changed?
I have a different view to what Rufaro is saying. I think that if you read through From Third World to First, Lee Kuan Yew, there's something that he did before he took over.
Maybe you might want to just explain to our viewers who Lee Kuan Yew is.
Okay,
and,
he was
and the book.
Prime Minister of Singapore from 1966. Before he took over, one thing that he did with his...
And sorry, the reason why that matters, I just want to put it out there so that people have proper context, is because in 1965, Zimbabwe actually had a bigger economy than Singapore. Today, if you're generous, Zimbabwe's got a $25 billion economy. Singapore, no, I'm being generous.
Okay.
Right? Singapore has an economy that's 300 billion GDP. And by the way, we have gold, diamonds, platinum.
Now you're sounding like an apologist for Lee Kuan Yew.
No, I'm not. I'm just telling you the facts.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Okay, so they've come a long way.
Yeah. So
yeah, but part of it, just so that we gather the context, is what Lee Kuan Yew did is actually look at the Western world. And what they did is understand the wrong and the right policies that was happening in the Western world. And what they were very clear about is, and he actually says this in the book, he says that we were astounded by the sheer ignorance of wealthyism that was happening in the Western world. We were like, why would people take up these bad ideas? So we were very clear about what bad ideas was, right? That's what they did. So what I'm trying to say is, where I sort of differ slightly with Rufaro, is Rufaro's argument seems to be, because China is going one way, this part of the world will take over those bad ideas and implement those bad ideas. And I think what is very clear, and that's why I quite like our debates around ideology, because you can easily be swayed one way or the other if you're not embedded in some sort of ideology. And that's why we are proponents of the free market, because what we're saying is, if we are very clear about what good is, then we can take this attitude where we can say, we like what the Chinese are doing with respect to 1, 2, 3, but we don't like this move. And we can equally say the same about the US,
and
about anybody else. And that's where we need to be. And I think that's the fundamental problem.
Fair enough.
But having said, we disagreeing.
He just wanted to give us a lecture. But having said that, so what do policymakers do when they see something that's not working?
Look, I think pragmatism demands that when something isn't working, you introspect, you apply your mind, and you try something different. Like
you ban the export of raw chrome.
But was the exporting of raw chrome not working? What problem were they solving by this ban?
They reckon we're losing value. We now have capacity to process all our chrome in the country. Apparently, we've got 22 smelters. So why are we sending this stuff out raw?
Yeah, but if that was true, and the chrome market was free, then if I am taking ore out of the ground, why would I not sell to a smelter who's beneficiating, adding value, right? Why would I want to export ore? Because ore is bulky and expensive to transport.
Because you own a smelter back home.
No. I think you're missing my point. My point is, if
I think I understand your point.
Okay, so why would a miner export ore instead of sending it to a smelter?
Because my business is only a small part in Zimbabwe. So in the overall interest of my business, I will export raw chrome.
No, but if the smelters in this country were efficient, right? Because your shipping costs are chalk and cheese, right? Exporting ore versus exporting the refined product or concentrate, it's much cheaper, right?
Okay, so your hypothesis.
It's not true. So maybe let me help you. When you look at beneficiation right across the global supply chain, transport is negligible now. It's very small. So it actually doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. What really matters is, and this is what Zimbabwe needs to understand, is if you have a finished product in Zimbabwe and then you try and move a finished product is very expensive in terms of tariffs and all sorts of things, costs. Just moving the insurance on a finished product is far much more than the insurance on just raw ore. And the second thing is, if the finished product the market for the finished product is in China. You are far better off just exporting the ore, and then you make the finished product in China, and there are no barriers in China. Whereas if you have the finished product in Zimbabwe, and this is what a lot of people in Zimbabwe don't understand about this whole beneficiation, is that if there's no market for the finished product within Zimbabwe, it will be very difficult for us to export the finished product internationally. So where you tend to find finished products, it's really around the marketing. So for example, when you look at Apple, right? If the DRC were to make a finished Apple product,
not an Apple, a Congo,
Congo product, and then try to sell that product, they may actually not find any buyers. It might actually be very difficult. So the DRC is actually better off just exporting coltan as they possibly can, because the real value, when you look at beneficiation, it's in marketing, it's in branding. It's not in the individual components of a particular product.
Okay, I'm going to cut this off here because we need to wind up and make room for your bonus episode. But at the risk of shining some more limelight on Tinashe, some of our longer-standing viewers would remember that our first episode, season 1, episode 1, was about SDRs, IMF special drawing rights. And it's now been confirmed they're coming.
Are they coming though? Because in Zambia, when this news broke, the market anticipated it, and the kwacha is actually strengthening against the US dollar because they anticipate this huge US dollar injection, right? So over the last 30 days, we've seen the Zim dollar lose value on the parallel market, and there isn't any evidence that I can see in the market that there's confidence that this money is coming through. So is this
everybody international lectured us
it's
for an hour.
Yeah.
Everybody
so why doesn't
gets
the market
them.
care? What are we missing?
The market is fully discounted. The market fully understands the problem that Zimbabwe is in, and I think they've also, and here we're just speculating, that the market's view, especially, so the news comes out, and in a week we've seen on the power market, we've seen the Zim dollar depreciate even further, and all the indications are that it's going to depreciate even further, and yet we know that this injection is coming in.
So isn't $1 billion a lot in this market?
Well, apparently not. I think the market is fully
So you say, what do you mean when you say the market is fully discounted? You're saying
the market believes it's coming and it doesn't care.
No, he's saying the exchange rate would have been worse.
Yes, that's one. But
Okay.
also he's correct. What the market is saying is if that money comes, already we know that the auction, there's a backlog in the auction, right?
Yes.
That's number one. And then the second thing is we know that the auction has actually increased its allocations, its weekly allocation from 40 million to about 45 million. And yet we know that there's a backlog already. So the market is anticipating that this $1 billion.
So in other words, the market, if the market hadn't heard about this, the market would have been worse.
Yeah.
Or could it be that the market just doesn't understand?
Because the market is always right.
There is the socialist.
Have you been?
The market is
Have you
always
been
right.
drinking some of that stuff?
Come out now.
The market
No,
is
I
always
mean
right.
you're always trying to clarify things for us, Tinashe, and teach us these things because you're convinced we don't understand markets. So could it be that the market doesn't really understand what's about to happen?
Listen, there are things that I personally would want to happen, but the market thinks in other ways. So, and I think last week we explained something, or it was Rufaro who alluded to this fact, that we don't know when these guys print money, but we only see the manifestation. So we know that they're printing when we see the power market run. And
It's a bit like what happens when you have a new baby brother or baby sister.
are you trying to tell us something, George? Is something cooking?
No.
Okay.
Or not that I'm aware of.
But you're quite right. We only know when it pops. And the truth of the matter is the person who has great control over the money supply of Zimbabwe is the RBZ. And it doesn't matter whether there's brilliant news coming out of the IMF, as long as you're printing, the market will react in a particular way. So, I would not want the market to run. It's not in anyone's best interest for the market to run. That's the other thing that we forget, that it's in everyone's best interest for the currency to be stable.
Except for profiteers.
Wow.
That's a dirty word on this. Are you trolling us, chap?
This chap is just trolling.
Maybe this is a good point for us to wind this up before it further degenerates. Once again, it's been lovely. We've hardly made a dent on that bottle, so we will be continuing. And as we promised, there will be a bonus segment where Tinashe will lecture us on crony capitalism, and
He will not go unchallenged, though.
oh
Yeah, no.
yes. So, have some more.
It's more interesting.
We just hope that these discussions inspire you to think, to question things. In the words of Bob Marley, emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. It's really about how much we think, how much we question things, and how much we debate things. And how much we put our thoughts and our opinions out there to influence other people's thoughts and opinions. Thank you very much for coming along. Once again, have a lovely weekend. Stay safe. COVID is real. Be good. If you can't be good at it.
Cheers to that.
Cheers.